are jumping into week number 3 of Breaking Bread. And before we jump into today's message, I'm going to give you a disclaimer. And this disclaimer is that there will be some topics surrounding marriage today that might be, topics you're not ready to have with your kids. So you have about 5 minutes, which gives you time to check your kids into Life Kids, and then come back if you're not ready to have that conversation. All of them are biblical conversations, obviously, but just an FYI, if you email me, if you talk to me, if you came in late and didn't hear this disclaimer, I'm so sorry. That's on you. But as we talk about breaking bread, what we're talking about in this series really ties into the Passover or the Last Supper, the moment that Jesus breaks bread with all of his disciples. And what we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks is how when Jesus breaks bread, he takes something that's very common, very average, very normal, and he breaks that bread and he says, "This is my body." Well, let's just read the scriptures. In Luke chapter 22, verses 19, this is the passage we've been going off of. It says, "And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' Likewise, he also took the cup after supper, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is shed for you.'" So what we're seeing is Jesus taking common things and moving them into holy categories. He takes something very common every day. It was just every year they had Passover, and he completely changed the meaning of Passover for a whole new religion. Every time they sat down to eat, they almost always had bread at their meal. He took that and leveraged it to make it holy, set apart, uniquely designed for the purpose of God. Almost every meal in Jewish culture, you're going to have wine at the table. He took the wine at the table and leveraged something that was common every day and leveraged it and changed it to make it holy. Holy meaning, or I might use the word sacred or holy all throughout today. And that just means it's set apart for the purposes of God. And so we've really been wrestling through how do we do that well? What does it look like? And so for many of us, and you're invited to come join us at 6 o'clock, we have small groups where we take time and moments and relationships and we connect those into an opportunity to come and make a moment holy, make a time holy. So you're invited to come back tonight. We got childcare, we got food. You're more than welcome to join us and have a conversation about the message and what it means to take something that's every day and make it holy. And so we've talked about relationships and moments, and what I want to tie into is objects. In the Old Testament, God told the Jewish people, these things are going to be holy. I want you to make this cup holy, and I want you to make this plate holy, and I want you to make this area holy. So there's a lot of objects that were holy. There was something called the Ark of the Covenant that was holy. It was just a beautifully ordained box that contained the 10 Commandments, the tablet of the 10 Commandments. And it was so holy, if the wrong people touched it at the wrong time that weren't ordained to touch it, they would die on the spot. That's how holy he made that box. And then he had, the temple was holy, and then he had what was called the Holy of Holies, which is just a fancy way to say the holiest place. And if you went in there when you weren't ready to go in there, it was so holy, you would die. And so there was all of these things that God intended to be holy, and he put really specific categories, told them exactly what he wanted, how he wanted them made, what he wanted them to be used for. He was very specific on the holy objects being used in a holy way. And when we say holy, these objects, this cup was now in the temple. It's not a regular drinking cup. It's a holy drinking cup. It's the one in the temple we use for the ceremony for the purposes of God. And what's interesting is that in the New Testament, we stop having objects that God forces to be holy and gives you these special, unique categories to say they're holy. And he leverages the Old Testament understanding of these objects to teach us what is now supposed to be the most holy thing. All of the objects in the Old Testament were object lessons in what it meant to be holy and how to really set something apart for the uses of God. And he tells the Jewish people something. He says, I want you to be a holy nation. You're my people. I want you to be a holy nation. I want you to be set apart. You're going to be a royal priesthood. And then we find in the New Testament that all that God is designed to be, all that God is designing us to do is to leverage what was in the Old Testament, what was designed for people to be holy, and objects to teach us how to be holy is an object lesson for us to learn how to be holy. It says it like this in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. It says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." what God is doing and what will be hard for you to hear is that God has said those things were holy to teach you how to be holy. I have set some objects aside, and I've designed them in a really holy way. And I gave you very specific ways in which you're called to use those objects. I was very clear. Like, you can go to the Old Testament, and there are random details that you're like, I'm going to skim this because this is too much. And they're using measurements that I don't understand unless I'm using a very new translation. And even then, I'm like, I've been studying it. I've looked at it multiple times, look at the commentary, and I still gloss over and skim through, okay? Can I be honest with you as a pastor that happens sometimes in Leviticus? Skimming through. Sometimes I'm skimming through because it's there's all these measurements. I go to Google, and I want to look at the object because of how descriptive they are of what it's supposed to look like. He's very descriptive on how the object is designed to be holy. And today, what I want to leverage is what we've been doing is taking things that are common and leveraging them to be holy, to use them to be holy, to help them point back to Jesus, to leverage moments, to leverage relationships. And today, what I want to do is kind of reverse it. I want to take a look at the things that are designed to be holy, or one specific thing today that is designed to be holy that the world would like to take out of its holy place and make it common. One specific thing that is designed in a very specific way, in a very specific category that God was very descriptive on to tell us how to do it, and then the world would like to pull it outside of that and just make it common. It's just every day. It's no big deal. It's not that big of a deal. And so what we're talking about is marriage. Is like all the way back to Genesis 2, God describes marriage, and then he describes it in this really weird way, right? If you look at Genesis 2, it says that the two become one flesh. That's a weird description. And me and my wife are not one flesh. Like, we didn't go get sewn together and like we walk together like Siamese twins. We're not physically one flesh at this point. And that's a weird graphic description, the blood, the stitches. We're going to have fun today. I'm going to have fun today, and I'm going to continue to make you more and more uncomfortable, and that's my joy. You can have your own, and you can not like me for it, but that's what we're going to do today. And so the idea of what it's supposed to be is this holy, uniquely designed relationship that is set apart and designed in a specific way. So as we talk about this, I'm not just talking about marriage. What I want you to see is that just like the objects were a lesson to teach us about relationship with God, I believe our marriages and the relationship inside of that marriage is designed to teach us about our relationship with God. Okay? So here's what I want you to catch. First off, if you're single, you're not left out. If you're single, you've been divorced, any number of categories of where you're at, you're not left out in the conversation because it's an object lesson, because ultimately I'm trying to help you to understand your relationship with God. What God has done to make this holy is to make it holy so that we understand how it relates to our relationship with God. So if you're single, you're like, I'm about to check out. I should probably go get some hot chocolate, just chill in the lobby because I don't need to hear none of this. No. You still need to hear this because at some point, this object lesson may become real life for you when you get married, or if you get married. At some point, this object lesson may get really real for you and help you understand the context of what you're getting into, and hopefully help you step up to realistic expectations. So single people, the world, Hollywood would like to teach us that marriage has to be both common and the most romantic, amazing thing that's ever existed, and it's super unrealistic. And as soon as it's not, then just find somebody else, right? And I want to tell you, to the person who married way out of my league, from the person who married way out of my league, from the person who has a healthy marriage from my perspective, I love my wife, I adore my wife, she's my best friend. It still takes work. And it's not Hollywood. It's not just a simple, like, everything works all the time. It's so simple. We're always getting along. Everything's happy. And so singleness helps us understand and get this message. If you're single, can maybe help you. Also, I'm going to talk through some categories, and I'm going to use some generalizations, so forgive me if you don't fit my generalization. Meaning, like, I'm going to say husbands typically prefer this, wives typically prefer this. If it's reversed, just fit where it fits, right? If it makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay. So Genesis 2 talks about holy and this holy and miraculous thing where two become one flesh. And so in that category, in that description, what I want, and this is the part where you're going to make yourself uncomfortable and your kids uncomfortable if you're ready for this. What I'm not talking about is not just everyday marriage. I'm not just specifically going to say marriage in general, but I'm also talking about the most holy portion of marriage. today we're going to actually have a conversation about not just marriage, but also the fact that you have something inside of marriage that is specifically, uniquely designed to be there. And the reason it's so uniquely designed and the way it's uniquely designed is that it is a part of your marriage that you are not allowed to do with anybody else. I have parts, almost every other area of my marriage, I can participate with anybody else. I can be very emotionally vulnerable with anybody I want, biblically. I can tell you my heart, my story. I can cry with you. I can do that. It's great that I do that with my wife. It's great that I share my heart with her and I'm vulnerable with her. That's fantastic. But when it comes to this part, when it comes to sex, that is one part that is only allowed biblically to be between me and my wife. All the other categories of our marriage that are great, that are healthy, the times together, the alone times, the connection, the conversations, sharing, splitting finances, having our finances merged. I can biblically do that with other people. We could have a joint account together, me and you. Just me and you having a joint account together, share our finances. It would be ridiculous, but biblically very acceptable. Nothing wrong with it. But that one specific part is uniquely designed, and I also think it's a part of teaching us something about our relationship with God, okay? So if it's designed to teach us something about our relationship with God, what is it like? What is that going to teach us? And what's interesting is maybe how difficult the Christian church has a time with talking about sex, having a conversation about sex, when if you've read through Scripture, you're going to come across a little book called Song of Songs. And if you were raised in a conservative Christian church and you read through Song of Songs, I can almost guarantee you're going to blush. Like, it's going to make you very uncomfortable. And the question is why? So let's read through. I'm going to make you mildly uncomfortable. I'm going to read through a portion that I'm comfortable reading to you in the middle of church, and then just let you know that it gets much more explicit. We're going to go to Song of Songs, chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. So what we're about to read is a woman speaking to Solomon, who is the king. And in the Song of Songs, there's an interchange between the two, where there's a portion where Solomon's speaking. Then there's a portion where his friends, all of their friends have a spot to speak, which is super weird. And then she speaks, and this is the part where she speaks. It says this: "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers." Chambers is his bedroom, like, you know what I'm saying? Some of y'all don't know. It says, it's about to go R&B from the 1990s, okay? Is what she's saying. This is the Western Christian church version that I'm comfortable reading to you. He starts getting into some descriptions that are very descriptive and uncomfortable. Some of them don't make sense, right? Like the way that we hit on women today don't quite translate in the Old Testament. At one point, he calls her like, "You're the most beautiful horse on a chariot." I'm sorry, did you call me a horse? Yeah. And she seemingly is like this, like, "Oh, yes, I am." You know, like she seems to just respond back to, "Oh, woo." And like she asks him to go get some foxes in the vine and it's a whole thing. So I'm reading to you portions that make us comfortable to read, and it gets way more descriptive. And this book is read out loud by modern Judaism, is read out loud on the Sabbath of Passover. The whole thing. Not just the portions I was comfortable reading with you. This whole book in modern Judaism is read out loud on the Sabbath of Passover. The Passover that we're talking about in Breaking Bread, the Passover that Jesus had his Last Supper on, this book is read out loud to the whole congregation. What is happening? What are y'all doing? Like, why are y'all reading this? It's because the Judaism has an understanding of what this book means. See, this book is about relationships. This book is about the intimacy of Solomon writing to this woman he wants to marry and this woman writing back. And mind you, in this book, it is titled Song of Songs. And Solomon is writing, this is the title, Solomon's Song of Songs. The Song of Songs just sounds like a weird phrase. That's the weirdest thing. He is saying it is the greatest song ever written when he says the Song of Songs. When we say King of Kings, we're saying he's the best king ever. When he says Song of Songs, he's very apparently humbly writing, "I'm about to write the best song that's ever been written right here." This is the song, okay, just in case y'all were wondering. Can you imagine, Ty, like Tenacious D did the song about the song that's the greatest song ever written? He's like, greatest song right here. Don't even worry about it. Y'all looking for the greatest song? About to write it down right here. I'm going to title it first. Greatest song ever written. Solomon's humility, it must have been known across the world. But he writes down the greatest song ever, and it's about sex. It's about him swooning over the woman he wants to marry and her swooning back over him. Okay, cool. So 2 things I want you to recognize. One is that God has designed sex for us. The part of the reason that one of the songiest of songs, one of the greatest songs ever written in the Old Testament is about sex is because your sexuality, the drive that you've been given, the desire of intimacy you've been given is given by God. It's supposed to be there. You have it there for a reason, and it's just whether or not you put it in the right context, the right time, you trust God's timing with it. If you do it God's way is the question. The second thing that the Jewish people understand that sometimes we're going to miss out, and both are true. There's many times in Scripture where there's 2 meanings. One is that your sexuality is healthy. You're supposed to have a sexual drive. It's innate in you, and there are exceptions to every rule. There are exceptions to things. There's medical issues. There's other things to take into account. But as a general rule, you're supposed to have a healthy sex drive. And you're supposed to do that inside the confines of marriage, a man and a woman connected together in the right way. That's the way the Bible has made it to be, the way God designed you. He gave it to you for a reason and a healthy reason. And what they understand is that it's an illustration, a metaphor for God's relationship with his people. The reason that they read Song of Songs on Passover is because Passover connects to when they were set free from their slavery. That's what Passover is. Hey, let's go look back and let's celebrate the moment that God set us free from our slavery in Egypt. And when he set us free, what he's writing to us is a love song about his people. What he's saying is that I love you so much, I'll do whatever it takes. And so in celebration of him setting us free, this is a metaphor that we're reading about his passionate love for his people. Okay, now we're talking about sex and our relationship with God. Jared, I'm not cool with that. That's not what I want to think about with me and my spouse. That's not what I was trying to do. Like, you're making this weird, man. I get that. And let me just say, it's not about you and your specific individual relationship with Jesus. It's about God and the whole of his people. It's a metaphor for how passionate God's people are designed to be for him and how passionate God is about his people. And if you see that imagery, the passion, the energy that takes place inside of Song of Songs to describe that, it's a little bit uncomfortable because of how we think about sex in the Western church, for sure. But it is also a beautiful picture of what is designed to happen, and it teaches us something about what our relationship with God should look like. The passion, the energy, the time, the way. And so what I would say is that how we deal with our marriage and even sex inside of our marriage is a good metaphor for how we're supposed to interact with our relationship with God. How we connect in that way is this illustration, and it doesn't just stop in the Old Testament. Paul carries it forward in Ephesians 5. And he starts giving these descriptions about what the husband should do and how the husband should love and adore his wife the way that Christ loved and adored the church. And he tells wives, like, wives, listen, I need you to respect your husband. I need you to respect your husband. And he goes into all of these things about how, like, the church is supposed to submit to Christ just like the wife is supposed to respect and submit to the husband. There's all of these descriptions. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's like, and I'm not talking really about marriage. I'm really talking about the church. It's like he's teaching us both how to do marriage and how marriage connects the church to God and how to understand the two. That there's this interplay of how we understand each other, and the interplay of how we treat our marriage should teach us and point to us of how our relationship with God is designed to work. See, because this holy thing set up in Genesis chapter 2 is basically the only thing we have left that's considered a covenant. A covenant is also the same word that we use for testament. The word New Testament really means new covenant. A covenant is a bond or a connection or a contract that's basically signed in blood. That's how connected it is. Jesus' blood on the cross, the sacrifice of the blood in the Old Testament, it's a covenant where you made an agreement together. It is a bond so tight, nothing should break it apart. And what's lucky for us, or maybe unlucky in some parts, what's lucky for us is that we have decided to come into a covenant with the one who always gets it right, and we know we're the one that kind of messes it up a lot. We know that he's getting it right and that he's doing the right thing, and it's us that's messing it up. And so our marriages When it's complicated, there's more complication, and we figure out the difficulty in what it is. How much better does it teach us that if this is getting complicated and this takes time and effort, and I can see you on earth here right now, how much more might it be complicated over here? Right? So if I look and I see this covenant that I'm designed to have in marriage, and I decide that I'm going to treat it holy, right? Because I'm trying to take marriage away from the common, the everyday. I'm trying to take your sex life away from the common, everyday, like whatever movie we've been watching, whatever shows we're watching, that just try to make sex just this, okay, again, 1990s. You can tell when I was raised. We're not just mammals, right? We're not going to do it like we did on the Discovery Channel, right? You know, some of you grew up. It's a song reference. It's way old. It's not common, right? We've tried that. We've tried to make it common, average, every day, right? Like the 1960s Woodstock crew that was like free love found out it wasn't very free. And all of a sudden, somehow, the free love group, when they grew up, turned into the Reagan Republicans. I don't know how that played out. I don't know how that worked. But the free love group learned, oh, this cost us something. The way that we were so free with our sexuality, it sounds like a good picture. On paper, it seems to work. On paper, it's like, hey, man, it's just an act. It's just two people getting together, and what does it even matter? Why is it even a big deal? On paper, I'm with you. It seems like it shouldn't be a big deal, and yet time and time again, it becomes a big deal no matter how good you are trying to make it common or average. It hurts in places it shouldn't hurt. It hurts in ways that it shouldn't hurt. It's like, why am I so emotionally connected to this person? It was just an act. It was just a moment. Why does this hurt so much? It's because God has said it's supposed to be holy, and when you take it outside of his context, it doesn't work. Right? Your desire in the context of what he's saying for you to do, healthy, good, still takes work, but still good. Outside of the context, painful. So here, let me give you the illustration. Let me give you some practical ideas. In marriage, in your relationship, you decide that I'm going to love this person. And for the marriage illustration, at least in Ephesians 5, there's some pretty there's like some pretty consistent commonalities. Women, respect your husbands. You're like, what, you're not supposed to love them? Well, yeah, love's a part of it, but we're insecure creatures. We need to know that you respect us. Guys, I'm going to tell our secret. We're really, really deeply insecure. The most confident men I know come home to their spouses. So ladies, maybe set you free a little bit. Your husband's not a wuss. He comes home, he breaks down in front of you, and you're confused because you married this really strong, confident man, and in front of you, he seems really insecure. What is going on? He must be weaker than I thought. No. We're all that way. Every man I've ever met is insecure and is dependent on the women in his life and hopefully the one woman in his life that he's married to help him feel important and proud of himself. And it shouldn't be that way. On paper, it shouldn't be that complicated. Just me and my relationship with God, that's all I need. But practically, it seems we are dependent on how our wives respect us, how much they adore us, how much they believe in us, how much that they root for us and cheer for us. Men, it seems like commonality-wise, women need to be adored, like need to know that they're the only ones you're looking at, that they're the only ones that you're thinking about, that throughout the day you're thinking about them, you care about them, you've put some extra thought. That for some reason it seems like common marriage practices, this is what takes place. And the beauty of this relationship is that if we learn each other well and we start to understand that, like, okay, what makes you feel loved may not work for everybody else, but I'm learning you. I'm not designed to learn everybody else. I'm in a covenant with you, so I want to learn you. I want to learn what makes you feel loved. I want to learn what makes you feel respected. So how can I do that with you? If we learn that inside of marriage, I believe it also teaches us how to learn and understand that relationship with God. No, I'm not here to keep everybody else happy. I'm not here to make everybody else feel respected or adored or loved, but you're my God. I don't have any other gods. Oh, no, man's opinion is not allowed to be my God, because in marriage, I learned how my spouse wanted to be loved. I learned how my spouse needed to be loved. I learned what helped my marriage be healthy because I learned them well. And when I learned that, then I came over here and understood my relationship with God better and understood that I need to read through your word to understand how you want to be loved. I need to read through your word to understand how a relationship works. I need to read through your word to see what's supposed to work and what makes you feel connected and what makes me feel connected. If I understand over here that there are moments that it is hot and heavy. There are moments where we're going on date nights, we're connected, it is going perfectly, and we're like, this is all marriage was supposed to be. It's so simple. I've got it all figured out. And then a month later, you're like, why do I hate this person? Like, I'm supposed to, That's just me. Okay, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm human. Y'all aren't human. But every marriage I've ever known, we sat and we had a moment where we're like, I love you, but I don't like you right now. Like like you're the most annoying person I've ever met for this moment. Just maybe only 10 seconds. If you're honest with yourself, just maybe for 10 seconds, you look him in the face and you're like, wow, you right now. Oh, if I could fight, I would fight, right? Maybe just for one moment you felt that feeling. And it was like, it was so good. And then all of a sudden, and if you track back and you invest and you say it's holy, and if you decide it's holy, and you decide that it's worth the effort and the work, you put work into it, and you look at it and you go, oh, for the last month, we've skipped out on some alone time together. We've skipped out on connecting well. We've been so busy with Christmas and the holidays and all this other stuff that we haven't spent time connecting together. Oh, maybe that's why it's not as good as it once was, is because we weren't doing what we were doing when it was good. Oh, that's going to work. And that teaches me over here, there are moments in my relationship with God where everything's connecting. Like I say prayers and God moves. There are moments in my relationship with God when I lift my hands and it's like the Spirit himself is right in my face. It's like the presence is tangible and I can feel it like I'm almost swimming through it. There are moments in my relationship with God when it seems like he shows up and everything works perfectly. And then all of a sudden, a month later, I'm like, why did that person die? Then all of a sudden, a month later, I'm like, why is this not working? Then all of a sudden, it seems like nothing is connecting. And if I've learned over here how relationships work and that it takes work and that, hear me out, anything that is good is worth the work to make it good, and I've learned that in my marriage because I made it holy, then over here I learn, oh, you didn't move, I moved. Oh, it wasn't you that moved. I stopped showing up to church consistently. I stopped worshiping on my way to work. I stopped reading scripture. I stopped connecting with you, and all of a sudden you seem distant, but it's been me the whole time. I learned that the work that it takes over here, because I designed this to be holy, I trusted your word when you said it was holy, is now teaching me how to love God well. It's teaching me the understanding that in relationships, that whenever I don't put the work in to make it work and to make it exciting and energizing and make everything healthy, then it doesn't translate. It doesn't work. So it's going to be the same thing with our relationship with God. It is designed to teach us that holy relationships, covenant relationships, have an illustration for us to understand. And here's the thing. If we don't recognize on earth, like this works like this, I would bet we don't understand how this works. Hear me out. It may be hard to hear. If I treat marriage common and I say like, man, I mean, it's whatever. Like she can get on board or not. It's up to her. I'm going to do my thing. And if she's not cool with it, that's on her. If she wants to leave me, she can leave me. Or maybe I'll just jump ship. Maybe she gets on my nerves so much, I'm out. Like I don't put the work in because it's not holy. Well, that's not how that husband had to treat his wife, so I ain't going to have to do that. That's not what my daddy used to do, so I'm not going to love her that way just because that's what she needs. We got all these excuses as to why we can just move it into a common category and blame it on somebody else and not put the work God has called us to put into in this marriage. If we do that, I would bet with a lot of money that I don't have, and I don't have the statistics to prove it, but I would bet a lot of money that if we do that here, I bet we also do that over here with our relationship with God. What I mean by that is like, man, I ain't going to that church no more. That dude's getting on my nerves. I'm out. As soon as it stops clicking, we're out. Well, I mean, yeah, I like kind of follow Jesus, but like also sometimes man's opinion. I'll do what God says to do as long as it fits what my promotion at my job says to do. Like I'm gonna follow God and be in this covenant committed relationship where I submitted my life to him. And it took blood on the cross to make this covenant. But like, I mean, if it's hard, if I got to sneeze when I wake up, I'm not going to go to church. Like that's too hard. I don't want to do that. Right? If we didn't learn the work it took to put something natural right in our face, the relationship that's right in our face, what it took to make that work, I have a feeling that we're going to have a hard time understanding how much work it takes to make our relationship with God work. That it's an effort that takes place. And our desire to submit over here and to say, hey, this thing that God gave us is supposed to be mutually gratifying. So we're going to have intimate, deep conversations about how to make that work. I'm sorry, both parties are supposed to enjoy this moment in our marriage. How do we make that work? We have conversations. We find out, oh, you need emotional connection for this to work? That's so weird. We don't, right? We're like, what? What is emotion? We don't need emotion. This is just an act. We learn each other well. We do the dance well. It teaches us how to do the dance over here. It teaches us moments of worship and understanding what God wants from us and how our love for him connects to him and him back to us. The beauty of both relationships is they create life, right? Both relationships, the right context, the love, it's this weird kind of like Trinity thing where God said, let us make man in our image. The product of his love was you. The product of that love was you. And in most contexts, generally, the love of a marriage at some point will produce life. See, there's this metaphor that's beautiful, and the decision is, am I going to do the work to make it work? And I would venture to bet that until we learn how to do it naturally, we have a hard time learning how to do it spiritually. And so here's what I want you to catch. For many of you, you're like, well, I messed that up 1,000 times, Jared, so now what? There is an infinite amount of grace for all of the mistakes you've made in your past. Infinite amount. I don't care if you got 10 divorces under your belt. I don't care what your past says. There's an infinite amount of grace for how you've treated your spouse. From God anyways. There's an infinite amount of grace for all the mistakes you've made in the way you've treated marriage before. Infinite amount. But today you can change. Today you can make the decision to treat it holy. Maybe you're single and you're like, today is the day where I'm going to start to look at it as holy. Today is the day where I'm going to realize it takes work, and I'm going to put the work in because I'm going to learn how to do it naturally so that God can teach me how to do it spiritually. I can learn the work it takes in my marriage so that I love this relationship well enough that it teaches me how to do the relationship God has called me to have. And if you're single, maybe you're divorced, however, how you wait teaches you whether or not you trust God's ways or not. How I wait, like don't get me wrong. Most awful, difficult thing that God has ever asked us to do is like give you this healthy, natural drive to want something and then tell you to wait on his timing. Torture, right? If you're single and you're waiting, you know what I'm talking about. If you've been single, you've ever tried to wait, you know what I'm talking about. It is a torturous experience, but it is an experience that teaches me whether or not I trust my feelings and my desires or whether I trust God's words and God's ways. And in that teaching, I've learned and found that God has shown himself faithful, that it is healthier inside of the context of the way God says to do it than to do it the world's way. I've seen people do it the world's way and fall apart. I've seen people do marriage the world's way and end up in turmoil. I believe that God has called us to be weird, strange. It says it like this. So we read 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. Now we're going to go 2 verses up to verse 11. And this is what Peter says to his people. He says, "Beloved, I urge you as aliens and strangers to abstain from fleshly lusts which wage war against the soul." Aliens and strangers. Where I think we miss it in our marriages and as single people trying to wait, where I think we miss it is that we want to be common, we want to be average, and we don't want to be holy. We don't want to be weird. We don't want to be aliens. Like, yeah, but like I'm supposed to date this person and tell them I'm waiting? Yeah, that's weird. God's called you to be an alien. Another passage calls us a citizen of heaven, not a citizen of this world. So you come in with all the strange customs you have from your own country. You come in with all the accents that you have from your own country. You don't fit in, and you're not supposed to fit in. I don't want you to fit in. I want us to decide that however it is that God has called us to live, we're going to live, even if we look weird, because I would rather be weird for Jesus than normal and have my life falling apart in the world's way. Because I've seen how they do their finances. I've seen how they do their marriages. I've seen how they do sex. It is not working. It is better to be weird following God than to look like everybody else and to find out it doesn't work the hard way. To find out that like, oh yeah, I tried that. I tried 5 marriages and it didn't work. I wonder why. Because God said something different. He said, wait till the person. Wait, spend the time, spend the prayer, follow my ways. Trust me, learn that marriage is supposed to be holy. So come into it with a holy mindset. And I'm telling you over and over again in conversations, this bears it to be true that God's way is better. Both in your sex life, in your marriage, in your finances, in every which way, be weird. Be okay being an alien. Be okay being a citizen of heaven and not of this earth. Because if you are dying for other people's opinions, you will just consistently let Satan lead you astray. But when you decide, I'm okay being weird, you're going to find out it's healthy. I was looking up stats on marriages. And one of the longest ones, I'm reading through the table of charts of how they calculate it out. Like, does religion help sex? That was what I was curious about. Like, does this God's word bear out to be true? Is like, are you having like better sex, like more sex? Is it better if you do it God's ways? And I'm like, okay, is this true? Does it bear out in reality? And I had one sentence that that sums it all up for us. One sentence that the author and the scientists that are putting the study together, massive study, long study, at the very end says, our theories didn't bear out the way that we thought it would. And this is the quote I want you to hear. The quote that they said is, some ideas for future research could include a look into the reasons why conservative Protestants have more sex. Oh, what? I'm sorry, we're having more sex? We're conservative Protestants, in case that confused you. Our way is better? Well, look at that. Because Hollywood tried to make me think. Because they tried to make it sound like, because I thought that they was doing some stuff, it's us. Because God's ways are better consistently. Don't let the world lie to you that it looks good, it seems better. God's ways over and over and over again have been shown to be better. Let's pray. Thanks for joining us for today's message. And our prayer is that God used that message to get exactly what He needed for you today. If you're still joining us, you may be looking for a way to join the community. We'd love for you to comment, share, send us a message. Help us connect with you because we want you to feel like you're a part of the family here at The Brick. If you're looking for a way to give back, you can text the word BRICK to 45888. That's the word BRICK to 45888. The first time you do that, it's going to connect you to a credit card, debit card, or bank account. We just want to say thank you for being a part of leading people to become fully devoted followers of Christ.